As we present the gospel, we will find that not everybody is a truth seeker. They haven't knocked, they haven't asked, they're not seeking, and therefore the doors aren't open. In fact, when they present their objections to the gospel, whether they're doctrinal or moral or personal objections, they often do that to just throw you off. Smoke screens. Many of those questions they learned in, Philosophy 101, at Canaanite Junior College or something. Many of them will just throw things at you that they've read in some blog, and they're just trying to mess with you. Your job is to try to determine the difference between a stall and an objection. There are also truth seekers who will present to you stalls. They don't know they're stalls. They keep firing their questions at you. And if you feel the need to answer every question in a gospel presentation, you'll never get anywhere. So you have to learn what's fundamental to the gospel. What do they need to believe, admit, acknowledge, and accept? Because anything beyond that is not a part of your present discussion. It becomes future discussion. So what I like to teach people is what I call traffic light evangelism. We all know what a traffic light is. Varying countries obey them but don't obey them. But we know what a red light means. It means stop. Don't go any further. Stop. Pay attention. A yellow light means proceed with caution. It doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean go. It means pay attention and wait for it to turn red. If it turns red before you enter the intersection, you better stop. But if you're halfway through, keep moving. A green light, of course, says go. Until there's what? Until it turns yellow and red. You keep going. So it is. What are red light objections? These are objections to the gospel, doctrinal, moral, or personal objections, it doesn't matter, that will put a stop to the gospel, in which they cannot move further. Because if that's not answered, the gospel is compromised. If they don't believe and say yes, to believe, admit, to agree, to acknowledge, to accept any of those issues that we talked about, then you've got to stop. And what you have to do at that point is stop and say, may I send you some information that I think would be a good answer to that, and would you read it? If they say yes, send it. If they say no, send it. But that's a red light. You change the subject. Now, what often happens is they'll come right back to it. And I've seen it happen many times, but you're not going to move forward. It's a red light until they make it yellow or they make it green. The next thing is a yellow light. That's where you come in, and these are yellow light stalls. Minor issues. I used to go to church, I don't anymore. Okay. Why would you talk about it? Well, I think there's some mistakes in the Bible. All right, we'll talk about that later. Well, what about creation? Well, I don't believe in this kind of thing, creation. Okay, fine, we'll talk about that later. Really good question. But it has nothing to do at that point with the gospel. They do not have to understand creation to get saved. Oh, they are going to at some point have to understand what the Bible says about certain things, but not now. And we get confusing to them. And so it's only a stall. Guy says, gee, I don't like church. I don't believe in organizational or institutional church. Okay, let's talk about that. And then you move on. But green light, what do? You keep going until there's a red light or a yellow light. So again, at a red light, you stop. Ask them if they want more information. Send it to them. Talk to them later about it. Yellow light, you proceed with caution and go, thank you, let's talk about that later, but can we move on to believe, admit, agree, acknowledge, and accept? And then lastly, is it a green light? And if so, keep going. Keep going until they come to a saving knowledge of Christ.